I really think that gratitude is the difference between a happy person and an unhappy person.
So welcome to the Simplified Organization podcast, 15-minute conversations with real moms about managing our homes and family life cheerfully to the glory of God. We can actually enjoy housework and love being homemakers when we focus on truth and work with gratitude. I'm Mystie Winckler, homemaker, homeschool mom, and author of the book Simplified Organization, Learn to Love What Must Be Done. And today I'm joined by Tilly Dillehay. She's a pastor's wife and homeschooling mom of 4 in the smallest county in Tennessee. She has written for Desiring God, the Gospel Coalition, and Risen Motherhood, and is the author of the Christian Book Award-winning Seeing Green, Broken Bread, and the newly released My Dear Hemlock, which is what we're going to talk about today. She co-hosts the Home Fires podcast and keeps trying to get beets to come up in her garden. So welcome, Tilly. It's great to meet you.
It's great to be with you. Nice to meet you too.
So I just finished reading My Dear Hemlock yesterday.
Oh, wow.
It is, for those of you who haven't heard about it, it's like Screwtape Letters, but for women. So the patient is a woman, and kind of the tempters are kind of taking a more feminine approach as well to the and exploiting feminine tendencies.
Right.
So is there a backstory for how this book came to be, your reasoning or your inspiration? It seems like a pretty ambitious project.
Yeah, it actually started as some blog posts. So I don't think when I started using this voice, I had any thought of making it a full 30 letters or however many letters to make a book. But I think it just started as a device that I was using to sneak around and talk about certain issues kind of from the side or from behind. And it was a really fun way to sort of fictionalize real life. And I think, yeah, Doug Wilson had asked me in an interview whether I was going to be into fiction now. And I was just thinking like, no, this isn't fiction. It's not, it's really not fiction. So, I mean, it's just basically, it's nonfiction content that was fictionalized in such a way as to make it kind of catch you unawares. And I think that's one of the really useful things about fiction. But yeah, I think I just got where I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed using the voice and kept going until I had maybe 10 or 12 blog post letters. And then I set it aside. And I think it was a year or two later, I thought, what if I could finish this out, make it a full project?
It really does come at issues that would be difficult to address
Yes.
nonfiction.
Yeah.
But with the coming from that kind of Screwtape perspective, from the demon's perspective, it does add that, like, oh, that really is a sin, or that really is a temptation, and I wasn't thinking about it that way.
Yeah. Along with the sort of motive, the extra motive to see them defeated, which comes when you hear the other side. So yeah, I think, and that's the effect that I think the Screwtape Letters had on all of us, was just this feeling of like, well, I don't want to see them win. I don't want to see them in this patient's life. I don't want to see them in my life. So that's useful as well. But yeah, I mean, the thing about writing just a straight prose article, like I'm trying to work on one right now that was assigned on a specific topic that I'm excited to write about it. It's a great pitch, but you need examples. Like I need illustrations to make any piece work, really, at least for me. And when you come to writing about like female lust or about marriage things, or even just a lot of relational things, you either get to use someone else's life, like something that someone told you as an illustration, or some story that you heard as an illustration, or you have to use your own life as an illustration. And it's really tough to do any of those things depending on what you're dealing with. So the nice thing about the fiction is that you kind of have a ready-made license to take the illustration wherever you want it to go, and also take it as far as you want it to go. So yeah, I guess that's what the license of imagination, is what it gives you. So I really appreciated that. It really helped me a lot.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So it follows a woman's kind of whole life from childhood, but from early marriage
Right.
through death. And by the end, she's a grandma.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she
And
might have grandchildren. I think you're right. Yeah, I think she has a grandchild. So she's kind of where you're at, but you're obviously a very young grandmother. Yeah, she's like a recent convert at the beginning of the book and a newlywed, and then it carries her into middle age.
and I think those areas of life, I think we often just don't even recognize where we are tempted. And
Mhm,
so to read it in the story and say, "Oh yeah, friendships can do that." Or could my
mhm,
friendships be steering me this way or that way? And what
mhm,
what could I be doing to,
mhm,
you know, make them go the right direction, to be actually uplifting and
mhm,
beneficial to myself and my friends? Or am I pursuing friendships with some of
mhm.
these, temptations?
Yeah, kind of ulterior motives. Yeah. Yeah, those are all experiences that I've had in through the years.
Yeah, well, they all
So,
seem to be very universal. Kind of,
mhm, yeah.
it doesn't feel like, oh, one certain kind of person is really being roasted here. It's like, oh yeah, this
Mhm,
is common to women, and the tempter's voice, or the Madame Hexrat, Hoaxrat,
I think hoaxrot, but it's so
Hoaxrat.
funny. I just finished doing the audiobook, and the last couple days I was wishing I might even still email them this and be like, "Hey, can we splice in instead of her saying hoaxrot, it's supposed to be a French." And I was thinking, if you really were to pronounce it like over the top, actual like "ro," like what just for, just to be silly basically. But yeah, it's Madam Hoaxrot. But yeah.
The names are fun. It's also a book that's not taking itself too seriously. And I think
Mhm.
that really helps all the lessons really hit home and land. It's almost fun, but then convicting at the same time.
Right. Yeah, it's serious. I mean, that's the way I always experience Screwtape is that it's serious, serious stuff. And then at the end, when things go down, even when you have the demon coming after the other demon at the end, suddenly you're like, oh, whoa, whoa, oh, this is really creepy. So I always like that. And I like the fact that yeah, that the fact that he's taken on this voice that is obviously not what he thinks a demon really sounds like, but it has,
Right.
it has its sort of use. Even that, it's a little bit winky, but it's not cartoonish.
Hmm.
And I guess that's what I was shooting for. I was shooting for kind of winky, but not cartoon. So,
So of the different temptations or time period in her life,
yeah.
are there any in particular that you really feel like that's the one I really want called out, or that I really think is like the
Mhm.
need of the hour for women to hear?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that a lot of the earlier chapters, you're just seeing her kind of flail around a little bit in terms of just contentment and maturity. Like she wants to be mature, but you kind of see her as she's really not, a mature Christian, but she sort of desires to be. And I guess contentment is a big part of it. But I think what I was trying to show is that if you continue to pursue the Christian life and you continue to pursue righteousness and just the basic Christian disciplines and church life and stay married, the Lord is actually going to change you. And you see this woman becoming a mature woman who's actually, a pillar in the church or at least, a part of the church and actually grow in contentment, and in gratitude. I mean, that's a big one. I think the contentment and gratitude issue is probably a woman's number one issue. I don't know. When I look around, it seems like that's it. Like it hits because it hits every which way. It's something we all have to learn over and over again as our stages of life change. But just the idea that every woman, if you were to look her in the eye and say, I know that you'd be happy and contented if you leave that blank open, she always has it. Like, she always has an answer to that question. Anyone that you've ever spoken to has an answer to that question. It's that one thing that she's just sure when it happens, that's gonna be it. Or even if, even if she's self-aware enough to know I'm not going to be, fully complete when this thing happens, it's still the thing she's waiting on. And it's at the tip of her brain all the time. So, yeah. So just the growth and gratitude. I really think that gratitude is the difference between a happy person and an unhappy person.
For sure.
Mm.
Well, and I think that self-awareness is a theme throughout the book, and it
Mhm.
was a good reminder, like, it's the lack of self-awareness that it seems like the demons are taking advantage of, and that
Right.
they've been trying to prevent
Mhm.
self-awareness.
Yes, that's
And
right.
so to think about that and say, "Oh, okay, so that means when she has self-awareness and recognizes a temptation, she can reject it.
Mhm.
If she recognizes a sin, she can confess it, and it's portrayed as, like, that's a real
Mhm.
cleansing and protection that's efficacious moving forward."
That's right. Because a truth stated is a powerful thing. And yeah, and I do think that is kind of a theme in this book and probably Screwtape too, just the idea that keeping the temptation below the surface is the main the main battle, I think, for the demon. Like, they don't want you to think about the fact that you're being tempted. If you were to think about that, then the game is up. So the idea is don't allow her to understand where the battleground actually is. Cause her to think that it's over here, and keep her busy thinking about this stuff over here so that she doesn't think about this stuff over here. Yeah, that comes up a lot.
Another one of the pieces that I really liked was that there were just a few points where the home was a protected home, and that the hospitality being extended in a home was where she became a Christian in that kind of a home.
Yeah.
And then closer to the end, some real maturing and protection was happening because of a certain kind of home and
Mm.
hospitality. But it's almost like the demons are locked out of that. So it's a very light touch. But just to think about how the atmosphere and aroma of our home and the hospitality that we extend really is effective.
Yeah, and it's warfare. It's a
Right.
military outpost in this book. It's like this is a place that we don't really like to go, and there's a lot of really dangerous activity in this place to our ranks. So basically watch out for this. We know that there's certain homes that are more dangerous to us than others, basically. And I mean, super autobiographical. The first letter, everything else is probably a blend of other friends' stories and my stories or whatever.
In the next episode, we'll hear more about Tilly's testimony and how she wove that into her book, My Dear Hemlock. You can find a link in the description to get your own copy of her book, and I highly recommend that you add this book to your stack this year. And come back next week to hear the rest of our conversation. Until then, remember to repent, rejoice, repeat.